So I filmed this video before, and I'm really glad that I messed the footage up so bad that I couldn't release it. I want to talk to you about Digger, Smoked Out. And this book is just so bizarre. I took notes for like the first 3 or 4 chapters because every single page was something that just was like, holy crap, I can't believe he wrote this. I picked up the book for Garb August. And the reason I picked the book up was because, I mean, look at it. This is like a man's man on the cover punching some dude. And, Warren Murphy has over 20 million books in print, which I don't know who bought them, but they sure did print them. Anyways, this man ended up selling like 60 million books. And I don't know how, because this is the most Garb August Ask Garb August book I have ever read. I want to go through just kind of what happened at the beginning of the book and a breakdown of like Digger as a character. And then we can go into why, for some reason, this book is actually really good. Not good in a holds up against books that aren't boilerplate stories, but this book is actually fun in spite of its ludicrous flaws. So this book is about Julian Burroughs, whose friends call him Digger, and his enemies, and he doesn't like it, or something like that. The book starts with him sitting in a bar because he's always early to anything he has to show up to, especially if it means he can sit at a bar and drink. He doesn't like to be late, and he likes to be boozed up before people meet up with him. His boss shows up and is like, hey, I got a job for you. And then they start like yammering back and forth, talking crap to each other. And it's like, what is this? What is this toxic relationship? Then out of nowhere, Digger's talking about, yeah, if only in high school, if that stupid science teacher would have graded our football team on a curve, then maybe we could have won state. But no, instead we lost 113-7 or something like that. And it's like, bro, just be better at tests. I don't know what to tell you. As this goes on, his boss gives him like a packet and tells him about his next job. And Digger is a life insurance fraud investigator, which first it's like, oh, what? This is a men's adventure novel about a guy that investigates life insurance fraud? And then it goes on to talk about how, blah, blah, he's 6'3". It explains it in the weirdest way because he's like, yeah, my boss is only 5 foot and I'm 15 inches taller than him. And it's like, okay, I mean, good for you, I guess. Then he leaves and he hops in his car, which is a 1982 white Mazda RX-7. So Digger is definitely a man after my heart. And he takes off to his condo that is right on the Las Vegas Strip. When he gets there, he like opens the door and he's like creeping a little and he's staring in on a woman as she's like getting out of the shower and toweling herself off and stuff. Well, this is his roommate with benefits type thing, which when I first started reading this, I was like, ooh, that's weird and stuff. But he kind of does a decent job of fleshing out her character later on in the story. And so then she notices him and then they immediately start talking and they're like yammering back and forth and bickering and fighting. And it's like, bro, is this all you do is just argue with people? They're in like some open relationship type thing and they start arguing about who's sleeping with who and all sorts of stuff like that. And I have no idea what's happening. And she gets her dress on and he helps her zip it up and he complains about why these dresses have goofy zippers and blah, blah, blah. And then he's asking her why she's going out without wearing underwear. And the whole time I'm reading this, I'm like, what is going on? Who writes like this? But anyways, I keep reading because for some reason I am compelled to keep reading. This was all in like chapter 1 and I am just hooked already and I can't figure out why. So then she leaves and he goes to check his go bag that has his shoes and his clothes and everything he needs to kind of go do his job. Because the mission, which I'm going to call it a mission because he treats it like a mission, the mission is in Los Angeles. So this woman who lives up in the Hollywood Hills died in a car accident. She drove off like a cliff. The life insurance company wants him to investigate it because it's like a $500,000 life insurance claim that doubles for accidents. So if this was an accident, they're out $1 million. And Digger is like best friends with the CEO of the life insurance company. So he kind of gets a really long leash, but he's also like the best investigator they have. So this is a very classic hard-boiled detective story. He keeps looking for clues and just is relentless. Like he definitely has some of the Sherlock Holmes style or like Jack Reacher style deductive reasoning where he can jump to a decent conclusion with some facts, but a lot of his investigative style is the pound in the pavement, asking everyone questions, looking for clues everywhere, digging into everything because his name is Digger, putting all these pieces together and figuring it out, which is interesting. At the beginning, it doesn't really read like that, but As the story progresses, this man is relentless. Anyways, he gets his go bag and makes sure everything is there and ready to go. And then, like the Sigma Chad that he is, he lays down in his bed fully clothed and falls asleep instantly, because real men can fall asleep without anything going through their head. They're just out, because that's how that works. The next day, he gets in his RX-7 and drives to Los Angeles. He brags about how he got there in 4 hours and 45 minutes or something, as if that's like a big deal. I did the math on from Vegas to LA, blah, blah, blah. He drove like 60 miles an hour. And it's like, all right, dude. Yeah, in 1982, there was like the 55 mile an hour national speed limit. So, okay, guy, you drove 5 miles over the speed limit for almost 5 hours. Okay. That's literally normal highway driving. So I don't understand how this is a flex. And at one point, he stops to get gas. And he tells the guy, fill her up. And the gas station attendant fills it up to $17.15. And then Digger's like, no, I said fill it up. And the guy's like, it is full. And he's like, no, you stopped on a number you wanted to stop on. I said fill up the tank. So he pumps some more gas in and stops. And Digger's like, fill it up. And he's just arguing with his gas station attendant. The gas station attendant ends up filling it up to like $19 and some change. And because I have a weird brain and I'm obsessed with cars, I knew that generation of RX-7, which is called the FB RX-7, had a 16.6 gallon gas tank. So I was like, wait, $19 and some change. How much was gas at that time? And it was like $1.28 or something. The boy was running on fumes when he got in there. So I guess that explains why he wanted a full tank, because he never fills his gas tank. So I feel really sorry for the fuel pump in that thing. But seriously, dude, you went in there on fumes, stopping at a gas station in the middle of the desert? You could have died. This whole time I'm thinking, what is this doing for me as the reader? Is this developing Digger as a character that is just argumentative and annoying to everyone around him? I kind of think that was the intent, but also it feels like some I am very badass wish fulfillment from the author. So he eventually makes it to Los Angeles. And when he gets there, he's talking about, yeah, I'm staying at the Sportsman's Hotel or something like that. And he immediately starts complaining about his ex-wife, saying that's where our honeymoon was. And we stayed married for 12 years and it was awful. It was torture, blah, blah, blah. So glad I left her and all that. I think the divorce came from both sides. There is like a brief snippet of her in the book and she does suck. So maybe they both sucked. So that's why they broke up. I still have no idea why that was included in here at all. So far, all we know about Digger is he is able to talk crap to his boss, who can't fire him because he's friends with the CEO. He investigates life insurance fraud. He argues with everyone and is very annoying. And he's bitter about his divorce, which I'm just like, okay. But somehow I'm still reading this and I'm reading this fast. I'm a slow reader when it comes to Eyes on Paper, but this book I was zooming through. So after he gets there, he stops at a stationery shop and he's like hitting on the woman behind the counter, which I guess that's kind of what he does. And he gets a my condolences type funeral card and takes it to the funeral. Like this guy goes to the funeral of the woman that died that he's investigating the life insurance fraud. He does it for a very smart reason. He starts sussing out like who was there, because if there's some life insurance fraud, murder or something like that, one of those people's probably the most likely culprit. So he takes this card and pretends to work for the funeral service and hands it around and has everyone sign it. The reason he has them all sign it is so then he has their names, so he can put a name to the face, and then he has a name he can start investigating through police reports, background checks, stuff like that. That is a very smart play. He sees all these different culprits at the funeral, and I will say, throughout this entire book, he does a really good job of setting up all the clues for who did it. At the time that I was reading, I was like, why am I getting all this crap? Like, this stuff is borderline boring. So far, it was the only part of the story that kind of lulled, but it was worth it. And it actually shows the strength of Warren Murphy's writing. Like, Warren Murphy writes some cringe-inducing dialogue, and the character is awful, and some of his internal monologue is like, holy crap, this was dated even for 1982. You should not be acting or saying things like that. But I will say, he can really craft a sentence. He's good at writing action scenes. The dialogue, while cringy, is very snappy and very well done. So for boilerplate fiction, this is very competently written, borderline well written. So I think that was a major thing that just kept me sucked into this story. As he's working his way through sizing everyone up, he's like, oh, this woman, she looks like blah, blah, blah. Her name's blah, blah, blah from the card. And she does this kind of thing. He gets to this old woman and there's the victim's mom, an obvious old woman who says something about, oh, she's got blue hair, which is a obvious sign that she's an alcoholic. And I'm like, what? Blue hair? Alcoholism? I didn't know that blue-haired women just like to drink, especially old blue-haired women. Also, where'd the whole blue-haired old women thing come from? Was it just something old women did back then? Did they use some of that purple shampoo type thing to blue out the gray in their hair? I don't get it. Maybe it's like perm chemicals or something. But yeah, so he leaves the funeral, and that's when things start to get interesting. The first thing he does is go up to where the crash happened. It happened right near the woman's house. There's a turn that has like a cliff because you're up in the Hollywood Hills. And there's this little dinky fence there that was broken. She drove right off of it. He's looking for skid marks of her hitting the brakes or anything like that, and there's none. And he has a brief run-in with the husband. Another thing, Digger uses a different name every time he talks to someone. And later in the book, someone's like, why do you do that? And he's like, well, if I give everyone a different name, then it takes a lot longer for these people to kind of figure out that I've been all these different places. So if I'm Tom Median when I'm looking at the road where the woman drove off, and then I'm Tim Kelp when I'm talking to this other woman about healthy herbal supplements and crap at a health store, these people aren't going to be able to collaborate where I've been. It just takes a lot longer before I get caught, which gives me more time to finish this investigation before the person committing fraud figures out that I'm onto them. And it's like, all right, dude. And I don't want to go much further into the story because so much of it drops clues for the end of the story. And originally I was going to spoil the crap out of this because I didn't think the book was like that good, but this happens to have one of the best reveals for a mystery I've read. And I haven't read a lot of mysteries and crime fiction, but I've read a fair amount. And for this to have such a good turn in it was pretty impressive. I had very low expectations going in, and those low expectations were met when it comes to the overall character. Like, there's some bad stuff in here. He fat shames someone. He is definitely a womanizer, but at one point the whole womanizing thing does get flipped. He talks into a tape recorder at the end of the day or the next morning when he wakes up hungover about what's going on. And he's also doing like his autobiography. It's mostly him just kind of reflecting on things. And that was interesting because he was the funny part was he was sitting at the pool in Hollywood, and he's a good looking man. He's tanned. He spends a lot of time in the sun. He's got blonde hair. He's 6'3" because you got to know he's 6'3" because every guy in these stories is 6'3". So he's chilling there drinking his vodka, dictating into his tape recorder. And this woman sits down next to him and he's like, I don't want you interrupting me. And she's an attractive, tall redhead. And she's like, I'm not going to interrupt you. I won't distract you, but can I listen? And he's like, yeah, it's fine, I guess. And I'll share my drinks with you too. So he goes back to it and she interrupts and she's like, hey, are you serious about that? And he's talking about his Oriental girlfriend, which also, who's using that term? Why? She's Japanese. She says so. She repeatedly tells him, I'm Japanese, dummy. But anyways, he's talking about her and his feelings toward her and blah, blah, blah. And this woman interrupts. And then he's like, hey, I thought you weren't going to interrupt me, blah, blah, blah. And they start hitting on each other again. Well, she's like, hey, are we going to your hotel room or mine? And he's like, let's go to mine. So they go up there and they do what people do in hotel rooms in the middle of the day when they're strangers. And afterwards, he says, yeah, I'm kind of glad you interrupted me dictating my memoir. And she's like, wait, that's real life? You're talking about something that really happened? And he's like, yeah, that's why I said it was my autobiography when you asked. And she's like, wait, that's not for a script or something? And he's like, no. And she's like, you're not a producer or a screenwriter or something? And he's like, no, I'm here on business, but I don't work in Hollywood. And then she gets all mad and starts screaming at him. And she's like, I wasted my time with you. And she like runs into the bathroom. I guess she's like washing herself off or something. And then he's sitting there thinking, wait, what's going on? She slept with him because she thought he was a Hollywood elite or something. She's trying to get a job. And I thought that was just like, wait, what a weird way to flip the whole manipulating someone for an advantage. It was just really weird. It is definitely par for the course with this book. It just really goes some really weird places. There is one ultra cringy part later in the book. He uses a homophobic slur that is not fun to hear, but it's seriously just one sentence. And beyond that, the rest of the problematic stuff is what you would expect in a book like this. The way he talks to women, but way the women talk to him too. There's a lot of back and forth in here. I probably would not recommend this to most people, but if you want to read like a competent mystery that is very 1982 and cringy and I Am Very Badass, then I would recommend this to you. But man, men's adventure fiction is just wild. When I started this book, I was like, this will be like a one and done if I can even finish it. And I finished it and I found out there's like 4 or 5 of them in total. I'm probably going to read the rest of them. It was just fun enough that I want to see where these go, which makes me think, like, is this garbage? If it's written well enough that I'm compelled to keep reading them and he sold a bajillion copies? And the answer to that is yes, this is garbage. I don't really know where I was going with this. I just wanted to talk about this book and just the bizarre things that happen. At one point, he pretends to be with the mafia to convince an Italian mechanic to check out a car for him for free. Well, not really for free because he does bribe him, but he makes it sound like he's more important than he is in order to get the guy to be honest with him. And there's a lot of that in here. Like, he's a sleazeball. He's a very manipulative sleazeball. But honestly, he really comes across as a white hat social engineer. There's a lot of social engineering in here, which I don't know how many of you have heard that term in the last 10 or 15 years. It mostly had to do with hacking into technology, which the easiest way to hack into technology is by hacking a person and not the interface. So a lot of the techniques he uses in here are things that I have seen in books like The Art of Deception by Kevin Mitnick. And it's just really fascinating. And I just realized that as I was talking, which kind of adds a whole nother aspect to this book that will make me enjoy the second one even more. Realizing that he's a sleazy social engineer who's just trying to make sure that life insurance fraud isn't being committed to save his company money. Speaking of that, he straight up says, I don't care if the person goes to jail if they killed him. I'm just here to make sure the company's not getting ripped off. I will give all of the facts to my boss, and if he feels like the police need it to do something about it, then more power to him. But I'm here for a job. And I think, all right, man, you're dedicated to your craft and I can respect that, but also maybe you should solve these murders if you can. Which later on, he kind of goes back on that statement because at one point he gets jumped by these dudes who I think are trying to intimidate him to go away. And he gets into like a fight and blow for blow with these street toughs. And of course he's badass, but also he gets rolled. And the only reason he gets saved is because one of the women that he had been chatting with showed up out of nowhere wanting to talk to him, and she started screaming for the police and stuff. If it weren't for that, he'd probably been knocked out and left in a ditch. And all of this is just really interesting. A lot happens in this book in the 240 pages. If you're interested in some really cringy 1982 investigation stories, definitely check out Digger. I think it's actually good enough that I will read one of them outside of Garb August. Well, I'm not making any promises because, our time is very finite on this little rock, so maybe I shouldn't waste too much time reading that and I should read other really good crime stories. But this was good enough to be fun, and why are we reading if we're not having fun? As I said before, not sure where I was going with this. I hope you enjoyed this little journey of this story. Let me know in the comments if you have read Digger or Warren Murphy's much more popular series, The Destroyer. And thanks for watching. And with that, I'll see you next time.